Welcome to Nero Wolfe Mysteries. We're approaching the end. What will Wolfe do? What does Anna know? What will Anderson accept? And the most important question, when this case finally closes, who will have truly won? In 1934, Rex Stout wrote a finale that changed the detective fiction genre forever. Now you're ready to experience that finale. If you're new here, subscribe to Nero Wolfe Mysteries at youtube.com/@NeroWolfeMysteries for more classic detective stories. Chapter 16 begins. I tried it again. FER-DE-LANCE? Wolfe nodded. Somewhat better. Still too much N and not enough nose. You're not a born linguist, Archie. Your defect is probably not mechanical. To pronounce French properly, you must have within you a deep antipathy, not to say scorn, for some of the most sacred of the Anglo-Saxon prejudices. In some manner you manage without that scorn. I do not quite know how. Yes, FER-DE-LANCE, Bothrop's Atrox. Except for the Bushmaster, it is the most dreaded of all the vipers. Fritz had cleaned up the mess, with my help, and served lunch, and we had eaten. When the snake had finished writhing, I had stretched it out on the kitchen floor and measured it, 6 feet, 3 inches. At the middle it was almost as thick as my wrist. It was a dirty yellowish brown. And even dead it looked damn mean. After measuring it, I stood up and poking at it with the yardstick wondered what to do with it, observing to Wolfe standing near, that I couldn't just stuff it in the garbage pail. Should I take it and throw it in the river? Wolfe's cheeks folded. No, Archie, that would be a pity. Get a carton and Excelsior from the basement, pack it nicely, and address it to Mr. Manuel Kimball. Fritz can take it to the post office. It will relieve Mr. Kimball's mind. That had been done, and it hadn't spoiled my lunch. Now we were back in the office, waiting for Maria Maffei, whom Wolfe had telephoned after receiving my call from Fordham Road. I said, "It comes from South America." Wolfe was leaning back in his chair, content, with half-shut eyes. He was not at all displeased that it had been his blow that had killed it, though he had expressed regret for the beer. He murmured, "It does. It is a crotalid, and one of the few snakes that will strike without challenge or warning. Only last week I was looking at a picture of it, in one of the books you procured for me. It is abundant throughout South America. They found snake venom in Barstow. Yes, that could have been suspected when the analysis was found difficult. The needle must have been well smeared. These considerations, Archie, will become of moment if Anna Fiore fails us, and we must have recourse to a siege. Many things will be discoverable with sufficient patience and, well, abandonment of reserve. Is there somewhere on the Kimball estate a pit where Manuel has carried rats to his FER-DE-LANCE? Did he extract the venom himself by teasing its bite into the pulp of a banana? Unlikely. Has he an Argentine friend who sent the poison to him? More likely. The young man, dark and handsome, Fritz says, who brought the note not from Miss Barstow, and who is admirably deft with vipers, will he be found to be on duller days an usher in a 116th Street movie theater, or a seaman on a South American boat, providentially arrived at the port of New York only yesterday? Difficult questions, but each has its answer, if it comes to a siege. It is likely that Manuel Kimball arranged some time ago for the journey of the FER-DE-LANCE, as a second string to his bow, thinking that if the contrivance designed by man should for any reason fail, it would be well to give nature's own mechanism a chance. Then, when it arrived, there was a more urgent need for it. Vengeance stepped back for safety. And now, To this moment at least, he has neither. Maybe, but he just barely missed getting one, and he may get the other any minute. Wolfe wiggled a finger at me. Faulty, Archie, inexcusably faulty. Vengeance will continue to wait. Mr. Manuel Kimball is not a creature of impulse. Should circumstances render him suddenly desperate, he would act with desperation, but even then, not impulsively. But Miss Maffei is due in half an hour, and you should know the arrangements before she arrives. Your notebook. I got at my desk, and he dictated 20 minutes without stopping. After the first 2 minutes, I put on a grin and kept it on till the end. It was beautiful. It was without a flaw, and it covered every detail. He had even allowed for Maria Maffei's refusal or her inability to persuade Anna. In that case, the action was approximately the same, but the characters were shifted around. I was to take it with Anna. He had telephoned Burke Williamson and arranged for a clear stage for us, and Saul Panzer was to call at the office at 6 o'clock for the sedan and his instructions. When he had finished dictating, it was all so clear that there were few questions for me to ask. I asked those few and ran back over the pages. He was leaning back in his chair, full of beer, pretending he wasn't pleased with himself. I said, "All right, I admit it. You're a genius. This'll get it if she's got it." He nodded without concern. Maria Maffei arrived on the dot. I was waiting for her on my toes and got to the door before Fritz was out of the kitchen. She was dressed in black, and if I had met her on the street, I doubt if I would have known her. She looked so worn out. I was so full of Wolfe's program that I had a grin ready for her, but I killed it in time. She wasn't having any grins. After I saw her, I didn't feel like grinning anyway. It sobered me up to see what the death of a brother might do to a woman. She was 10 years older, and the bright life in her eyes was gone. I took her to the office and moved a chair in front of Wolfe for her and went to my desk. She exchanged greetings with Wolfe and said, "I suppose you want money." "Money for what?" Wolfe asked. "For finding my brother Carlo. You didn't find him, neither did the police. Some boys found him. I won't pay you any money." "You might." Wolfe sighed. "I hadn't thought of that, Miss Maffei. I'm sorry you suggested it. It arouses me to sordid considerations. But for the moment, let us forget it. You owe me nothing. Forget it. But let me ask you, I am sorry if it is painful, but it is necessary. You saw your brother's body." Her eyes were dull on him, but I saw that I had been wrong. The life in them was not gone. It had merely sunk within, waiting back there as if in ambush. She said quietly, "I saw him." "You saw perhaps the hole in his back, the hole made by the knife of the man who killed him." "I saw it." "Good. And if there was a chance of my discovering the man who used that knife and bringing him to punishment, and needed your help, would you help me?" In the dull eyes a gleam came and went. Maria Maffei said, "I would pay you money for that, Mr. Wolfe." "I suspect you would, but we shall forget that for the present. It is another kind of assistance I require. Since you are intelligent enough to make reasonable assumptions, and therefore to be made uncomfortable when only reasonable ones are available, I had better explain to you. The man who murdered your brother is sought by me, and by others, for another act he committed, an act more sensational and not less deplorable. I know who he is, but your help is needed. You know? Tell me." Maria Maffei had jerked forward in her chair, and this time the gleam in her eyes stayed. Wolfe wiggled a finger at her. "Easy, Miss Maffei. I am afraid you must delegate your vengeance. Remember that those of us who are both civilized and prudent commit our murders only under the complicated rules which permit us to avoid personal responsibility. Let us get on. You can help. You must trust me. Your friend Fanny's husband, Mr. Durkin, will tell you that I am to be trusted. Besides, he will also help. I wish to speak of Miss Anna Fiore, the girl who works at the rooming house where your brother lived. You know her? Of course I know her. Does she like you and trust you? I don't know. She's a girl who hides her flowers. If any. A tender way of putting it. Thank you. Could you go in my automobile this evening, with a driver, and persuade Miss Fiore to take a long ride with you? Give her a good excuse, so she would go willingly. Maria Maffei looked at him. After a moment she nodded. She would go. It would be a strange thing. I would have to think. You will have time for that. I prefer to leave it to your wit to invent the excuse. You will use it better if it is your own. But that is all that will be left to you. One of my men will drive the car. In all the rest, you must carefully and precisely follow my instructions. Or rather, Mr. Goodwin's instructions. Archie, if you please. Wolfe put his hands on the edge of the desk and shoved his chair back and got himself up. You will forgive me for leaving you, Miss Maffei. It is the hour for my plants. Perhaps when you and Mr. Goodwin have finished, you would like him to bring you up to see them. He left us. I didn't take Maria Maffei upstairs to see the orchids that day. It was nearly 5 o'clock when I'd finished with her, and I had something else to do. She didn't balk at all, but it took a lot of explaining, and then I went over the details 3 times to make sure she wouldn't get excited and ball it up. We decided it would be better for her to make a preliminary call on Anna and get it arranged, so I took her out and put her in a taxi and saw her headed for Sullivan Street. Then I started on my own details. I had to get the knife and the masks and the guns ready and arrange with the garage for hiring a car, since we couldn't take a chance on Anna recognizing the roadster, and get hold of Bill Gore and Ori Cather. I had suggested them, and Wolfe said okay. He had already told Durkin to report at 7 o'clock. I got it all done, but without any time to spare. At 6:30, I ate a hurry-up dinner in the kitchen, while Wolfe was in the office with Saul Panzer. On his way out, Saul looked in at the kitchen to make a face at me, as if his ugly mug wasn't good enough without any embroidery. He called in to me. "Enjoy it, Arch. It may be your last meal. You're not dealing with a quitter this night?" I had my mouth full, so I only said, "Shrivel, shrimp." Bill Gore and Durkin were there on time, and Ori wasn't late enough to matter. I gave them the story and rehearsed Ori several times because a lot depended on him. We hadn't been together on anything for over 2 years, and it seemed like old times to see him again, twisting his thin lips and looking around for a place to squirt his tobacco juice. Wolfe was still in at his dinner when we got away a little before 8 o'clock. The garage had given me a black Buick sedan, and it had 4 wheels and an engine, but it wasn't the roadster. Ori got in front with me and Bill Gore and Durkin in the back. I thought to myself that it was too bad it was only a setup, because with those 3 birds I would have contracted to stop anything from a Jersey bus to a truck of hooch. Ori said I should have hung a sign on the radiator, "Highwaymen's Special." I grinned, but only with my mouth. I knew everything had to go exactly right, and it was up to me. What Wolfe had said about Anna Fiore was true. Her mental vision was limited, but within its limits, she might see things that a broader vision would miss entirely. I went up the west side and got onto the Sawmill River Road. The Williamson place was in the back country east of Tarrytown, on a secondary road. I knew the way as well as I knew 35th Street on account of my trips there 4 years before. I had expected to make it by 9:30, but traffic up to Yonkers had held me up a little, and it was a few minutes later than that, and I had the lights on when I turned into the drive where I had once picked Mrs. Williamson up in a faint and carried her to the pond to throw water on her. I drove on up to the house about 1/3 of a mile and left the three in the car and went and rang the doorbell. Tanzer, the butler, remembered me and we shook hands. I told him I wouldn't go in. I just wanted to speak to his boss a minute. Burke Williamson came right away. He shook hands too and said he was sorry they had missed me Friday night. I said I was sorry too. I'm a little late, Mr. Williamson. I came on up just to make sure that everything's set. No loose servants out hunting lightning bugs. Can we go ahead? Everything's arranged, he laughed. No one will disturb your sinister plot. Of course we're all itching with curiosity. I don't suppose we could get behind a bush and watch. I shook my head. You'd better stay in the house if you don't mind. I won't see you again. I've got to make a quick getaway. Wolfe will phone you tomorrow, I expect, to thank you. He needn't bother. I'll never do enough to make Nero Wolfe owe me any thanks. I went back to the car and turned it around and started back down the drive. I had the spot picked out, about halfway down, a full 300 yards from the public road, where high shrubbery was on both sides, with trees just beyond, and it would be good and dark. There, the drive was narrow enough so that I could block it with the sedan without bothering to swing it crosswise. I got the sedan into position and turned off the lights, and we all got out. It was nearly 10 o'clock, and our prey was due at 1:15. I passed around the guns and gave Ori the knife, and then handed out the masks, and we put them on. We were a hard-looking bunch, and I couldn't help grinning at Ori's wisecracks. Though to tell the truth, I was pretty much keyed up. The thing had to go absolutely right. I went over it again with them. They had it pat, and we scattered into the bushes. It was plenty dark. They began calling back and forth to one another, and pretty soon I told them to shut up so I could listen. After a couple of minutes, the sound came up from below of Wolfe's sedan going into second on the grade. I couldn't see the lights on account of the bushes, but soon I did. They got brighter, and then I saw the car. It buzzed along, getting close, and when the driver saw my sedan right ahead, it slowed down. I left the bushes on a run, jumped to the running board of Wolfe's sedan just as it came to a stop, and shoved my gun into the face of Saul Panzer in the driver's seat. The others were with me. Bill Gore was on my side on the running board, sticking his gun through the open window. One, with Durkin behind him, was opening the other tonneau door. Maria Maffei was screaming. There was no sound from Anna. Ori said, "Get out of there quick. Come on, do you want me to put a hole in you?" Anna came out and stood on the ground by the running board. Bill Gore went in and got Maria Maffei and hauled her out. Ori growled, "Shut your trap, you." He called to me, "If that driver grunts, let him have it. Put out the lights." Bill Gore said, "I've got her purse, it's fat." "Which one?" "This one." "All right, keep it, and keep her trap shut. If she yells, wrap her one." Ori turned to Durkin. "Here, hold this one while I put a light on her." Durkin moved behind Anna and gripped her arms, and Ori put a flashlight on her face. She looked pale and her lips were clamped tight. She hadn't let out a chirp. Orny held his light right against her, and his masked face was just behind it. He said, It's you, all right. By God, I've got you. So you will tell people about Carlo Maffei cutting out newspaper clippings and talking on the phone and everything you ought to forget. Will you? You won't anymore. The knife that was good enough for Carlo Maffei is good enough for you. Tell him hello for me. He pulled out the long sticker and waved it, and it gleamed in the light of the flash. He was too damn good. Maria Maffei yelled and jumped for him and nearly got away from Bill Gore. Bill, who weighed 200 and no fat, got all around her. Durkin was pulling Anna Fiore back away from the knife and saying to Ori, "None of that. Cut it. You said you wouldn't. None of that." Ori stopped waving the knife and put the light on Anna again. "All right." He made it sound bloodthirsty. "Where's your purse? I'll get you later. Come on, don't stand there shaking your head. Where's your purse? Where's that $100 I sent you? No? Hold her. I'll frisk her for it." He started for her stocking, and Anna was a wildcat. She busted loose from Durkin and let out a squawk that must have reached to White Plains. Ori grabbed for her and tore her sleeve half off. Durkin was on her again, and when she saw she couldn't get away, she put on a kicking and biting exhibition that made me glad I was leaving that to the help. Durkin finally got her snug, with an arm wrapped around her, pinning her arms, and his other hand holding her head back. But Ori never did get his hand inside her stocking. He had to tear it right off. I saw the getaway would have to be quick or we'd have to tie her up, so I had Saul back his car along the edge of the drive so I could get by with mine. Durkin came carrying Anna Fiore, still kicking and trying to bite him, and shoved her into the tonneau. Ori was with him, growling at her. "You kept my money, did you? You wouldn't burn it, huh? Next time you'll keep your mouth shut." I ran to the Buick and started the engine and rolled alongside. The others piled in. As we started off, Maria Maffei was yelling at us, but I didn't hear Anna's voice. I twisted around the curves of the drive as fast as was practicable, and as soon as I had turned into the public road, I stepped on it. Bill Gore in the back seat was laughing about ready to choke. I got to the Sawmill River Road and turned south and eased down to 40. Ori beside me wasn't saying anything. I asked him, "You got the money?" "Yeah, I got it." He didn't sound very sweet. "I think I'll keep it until I find out if Nero Wolfe carries workman's compensation insurance." "Why did she get you?" "She bit me twice. That lassie didn't think any more of that $100 than I do of my right eye. If you'd told me I had to subdue a tiger with my bare hands, I'd have remembered I had a date." Bill Gore started laughing again. "I thought it had been pretty well staged. Wolfe couldn't ask better than that. The only thing I had been afraid of was that Anna would get such a scare thrown into her that she would fold up for good. But now that didn't seem likely. I was glad Wolfe had thought of using Maria Maffei and she had been ready for the job, for I wouldn't have cared a bit about driving Anna Fiore back to town with her empty sock. The only question now was, what did she have and how soon would we get it? Would Wolfe's program carry through to the end, as he had outlined it? And if it did, what kind of a climax would she hand us? Anyhow, my next move was to get back to the office without delay, so I didn't take time to distribute my passengers where they belonged. I dropped Bill Gore off at 19th Street and took Durkin and Ori on uptown and left them at the Times Square subway station. Since it wouldn't do to leave the Buick out in front, I drove to the garage and delivered it and walked home. I hadn't cared much for the notion Manuel Kimball had got about the sort of present that would be appropriate for Nero Wolfe, and on leaving, I had told Fritz to put the bolt on as soon as we got out. so now I had to ring him up to let me in. It was nearly midnight, but he came to the first ring. Wolfe was in the office, eating cookies and marking items in Hoyne's catalog. I went in and stood, waiting for him to look up. He did so at length and said, "On time." I nodded. "And not on my shield, but Ori Cather is, nearly. She bit him. She bit Durkin, too. She was a holy terror. Your play went off swell. They ought to be here soon. I'm going up and dress for the next act. Can I have a glass of milk?" Wolfe said, "Good," and turned back to his catalog. I took the milk upstairs with me to my room and sipped it in between while I was getting undressed and putting on my pajamas. This part of the stunt seemed to me pretty fussy, but I didn't mind because it gave me a chance to doll up in the dressing gown Wolfe had given me a couple of years before, which I hadn't had on more than about once. I lit a cigarette and finished the milk, then put on the dressing gown and gave it the once-over in the mirror. While I was doing that, I heard a car drive up and stop outside, and I moved closer to the open window and heard Saul Panzer's voice and then Maria Maffei's. I sat down and lit another cigarette. I sat there nearly half an hour. I heard Fritz letting them in, and their voices in the hall as they passed on their way to the office. And then all I got was silence. I waited so long that I was beginning to wonder whether it wasn't working right, or Wolfe was finishing his charade without me. Then there were footsteps in the hall, and in a minute on the stairs, and Fritz was at my door, saying that Wolfe wanted me in the office. I waited a little, long enough to get awake and into my dressing gown, as if I had been asleep, and ruffled up my hair, and went down. Wolfe was seated at his desk. Maria Maffei was in a chair in front of him, and Anna in one against the wall. Anna was a sight, with one sleeve nearly off, a leg bare, her face dirty, and her hair all over. I stared. "Miss Maffei, Anna, did they set the dogs on you?" Wolfe wiggled a finger at me. "Archie, I'm sorry to have to disturb you. Miss Maffei and Miss Fiore have been subjected to violence. They were driving into the country to visit Miss Maffei's sister when they were set upon by brigands. Their car was stopped. They were treated with discourtesy and robbed. Miss Maffei's purse was taken and her rings. Miss Fiore was despoiled of the money which she has shown to us and which she so hardly earned." "No," I said. "Anna, they didn't take that money." Anna's eyes were on me. I met them all right, but after a second, I thought it would do to turn back to Wolfe. Anna said, "He took it." Wolfe nodded. Miss Fiore got the impression that the man who took her money was the one who had sent it to her. I have advised her and Miss Maffei to go to the police at once, but they do not fancy that suggestion. Miss Maffei mistrusts the police on principle. Miss Fiore seems to have conceived the idea that we, more especially you, are more likely to be of help. Of course, you are not at the moment properly dressed to go out in search of robbers, and the scene is 30 miles off. But Miss Fiore asked for you. Does anything occur to you? Well, I said, this is awful. It's terrible. And me upstairs sound asleep. I wish you'd got me to drive you to the country, Anna. If you had, this wouldn't have happened. I don't care who it was that tried to get your money. I don't believe it could have been the man who sent it to you. That man kills people. He would have killed you. Anna's eyes were going back and forth between Wolfe and me, but I no longer thought there might be suspicion in them. She was only stunned, overwhelmed by her unimaginable loss. She said, "He wanted to kill me. I bit him. Good for you." You see, Anna, what happens when you try to act decent with a bad man? If you had burned that money the other day when I wanted you to, and told us what you know about things, now you would have Mr. Wolfe's money. Now you can't burn the money because you haven't got it. And the only way you could get it back would be if I could catch him. Remember, he's the man who killed Carlo Maffei. And look what he did to you. Tore your dress and pulled off your stockings. Did he hurt you? Anna shook her head. He didn't hurt me. Could you catch him? I could try. I could if I knew where to look. Would you give it back to me? Your money, I sure would. Anna looked down at her bare leg, and her hand slid slowly under the hem of her skirt and rested on the spot where the 20s had been. Maria Maffei started to speak, but Wolfe wiggled her into silence. Anna was still looking at her leg when she said, "I've got to undress." I was slow. Wolfe got it at once. He spoke. "Ah, certainly. Archie, the light's in the front room. Miss Maffei, if you will accompany Miss Fiore." I went to the front room and turned the lights on and closed the windows and the curtains. Anna and Miss Maffei had followed me in and stood there waiting for me to leave. As I went out, I gave Anna a friendly grin. She looked pale, but her eyes were brighter than I had ever seen them. In the office, I closed the door behind me. Wolfe was sitting up in his chair, not leaning back. There was nothing to remark on the drowsy, patient hemisphere of his face, but his forearms extended along the arms of the chair, and the forefinger of his right hand was moving so that its tip described a little circle over and over on the polished wood. For Wolfe, that was going pretty far in the way of agitation. I sat down. Faint sounds of movements and voices came from the front room. They were taken long enough. I said, "This is a swell toga you gave me." Wolfe looked at me, sighed, and let his eyes go half shut again. When the door opened, I sprang up. Anna came through in front, clutching a piece of paper in her hand. Her torn sleeve had been pinned together, and her hair fingered back. She came up to me and stuck the paper at me and mumbled, "Mr. Archie." I wanted to pat her on the shoulder, but I saw she was sure to cry if I did, so I just nodded, and she went back to her chair, and Maria Maffei to hers. The paper was a fat little manila envelope. I turned to Wolfe's desk to hand it to him, but he nodded to me to open it. It wasn't sealed. I pulled out the contents and spread them on the desk. There was quite a collection. Wolfe and I took our time inspecting it. Item, the Barstow death clipping that Carlo Maffei had cut from the Times on June 5th. Item, a series of drawings on separate little sheets, exact and fine, with 2 springs and a trigger and a lot of complications. The shape of one was the head of a golf driver. Item, a clipping from a Sunday rotogravure, a photograph of Manuel Kimball standing by his airplane, and a caption with his name commenting on the popularity of aviation among the Westchester younger set. At the bottom was written in pencil, "The man I made the golf club for. See drawings. May 26, 1933, Carlo Maffei." Item, a $10 bill. It was a gold note, and there was pencil writing on it too. The signatures of 4 people: Sarah Barstow, Peter Oliver Barstow, Lawrence Barstow, and Manuel Kimball. The signatures had been written with a broad, pointed, soft pencil and covered half of one side of the bill. I looked it all over a second time and then murmured at Wolfe, "Lovin' babe." He said, "I tolerate that from Saul Panzer Archie. I will not from you. Not even as a tribute to this extraordinary display. Poor Carlo Maffei, to combine the foresight that assembled this with the foolhardiness that took him to his fatal rendezvous. We alone profit by the foresight. He pays for the foolhardiness himself. A contemptible bargain. Miss Maffei, you have lost your purse but gained the means of stilling the ferment of your blood. The murderer of your brother is known, and the weapon for his punishment is at hand. Miss Fiore, you will get your money back. Mr. Archie will get it and return it, I promise you. He will do it soon, for I can guess how little promises mean to you. The fierce flame of reality is your only warmth and light, the reality of $20 bills. Soon, Miss Fiore, please tell me, when did Mr. Maffei give you all this? Anna talked, not what you could call voluble, but willingly enough to Wolfe's questions. He got every detail and had me take it down. She had actually seen the driver. For many days, Carlo Maffei had forbidden her to enter his room when he was there working, and had kept his closet locked. But one day during his absence, the closet door had opened to her trial, only to disclose nothing to her curiosity more uncommon than a golf club evidently in process of construction. On Maffei's return, finding that the driver was not placed as he had left it, he had been sufficiently disturbed to inform her that if she ever mentioned the golf club, he would cut her tongue out. That was all she knew about it. The envelope had been given to her on June 5th, the day Maffei disappeared. Around 7 o'clock, just after he had answered the telephone call, she had gone upstairs for something, and he had called her into his room and given her the envelope. He had told her that he would ask her to return it in the morning, but that if he did not come back that night and nothing was heard from him, Anna was to deliver the envelope to his sister. When Anna told that Maria Maffei got active, she jumped up and started toward the girl. I went after her, but Wolfe's voice like a whip beat me to it. "Miss Maffei?" He wiggled his finger. "To your chair. Be seated, I say. Thank you. Your brother was already dead. Save your fury. After pulling Miss Fiore's hair, you would, I suppose, inquire why she did not give you the envelope. That appears to me obvious. Perhaps I can save her the embarrassment of replying. I do not know whether your brother told her not to look into the envelope. In any event, she looked. She saw the $10 bill. It was in her possession. Miss Fiore, before Carlo Maffei gave you that envelope, what was the largest sum you ever had?" Anna said, "I don't know." I asked her, "Did you ever have $10 before?" "No, Mr. Archie." $5? She shook her head. "Mrs. Ricci gives me $1 every week." "Swell, and you buy your shoes and clothes?" "Of course I do." I threw up my hands. Wolfe said, "Miss Maffei, you or I might likewise be tempted by a kingdom, only its boundaries would not be so modest. She probably struggled, and by another sunrise might have won and delivered the envelope to you intact. But that morning's mail brought her another envelope, and this time it was not merely a kingdom, it was a glorious world. She lost, or perhaps it is somewhere down as a victory. We cannot know. At any rate, her struggle is over. And now, Miss Maffei, do this and make no mistake. Take Miss Fiore home with you and keep her there. Your driver is waiting outside for you. You can explain to your employer that your niece has come for a visit. Explain as you please, but keep Miss Fiore safe until I tell you that the danger is past. Under no circumstances is she to go to the street. Miss Fiore, you hear? I will do what Mr. Archie says." "Good. Archie, you will accompany them and explain the requirements. It will be only a day or so." I nodded and went upstairs to put the dressing gown away for another year and get some clothes on. Chapter 17. When I got back after escorting Anna and Maria Maffei to the apartment on Park Avenue where Maria Maffei was housekeeper, the office was dark and Wolfe had gone upstairs. There was a note for me. Archie, learn from Miss Barstow her excuse for mutilating United States currency. N.W. I knew that would be it. I went on up to the hay, but out of respect to Manuel Kimball, I stepped to the rear of the upper hall to look for a line of light under Wolfe's door. There wasn't any. I called out, "Are you all in one bed?" Wolfe's voice came, "Confound it, don't badger me." "Yes, sir." "Is the switch on?" "It is." I went to my own room and the bed I was ready for. It was after 2 o'clock. In the morning there was a drizzle, but I didn't mind. I took my time at breakfast and told Fritz to keep the bolt on while I was gone, and then with a light raincoat and a rubber hat went whistling along on my way to the garage. One thing that gave me joy was an item in the morning paper which said that the White Plains authorities were on the verge of being satisfied that the death of Peter Oliver Barstow had resulted from an accidental snake bite, and that various other details of the tragedy not connected with that theory could all be explained by coincidence. It would have been fun to call up Harry Foster at the Gazette and let him know how safe it would be to stick pins in Anderson's chair for him to sit on, but I couldn't risk it because I didn't know what Wolfe's plans were in that direction. Another source of joy was the completeness of the briefcase which Anna Fiore had been carrying around all the time, pinned to whatever she wore underneath. When I considered that it must have been there that first day I had called at Sullivan Street with Maria Maffei, and I hadn't been keen enough to smell it, I felt like kicking myself. But maybe it was just as well. If the envelope had been delivered to Maria Maffei, there was no telling what might have happened. I telephoned the Barstow place from uptown, and when I got there around 9:30, Sarah Barstow was expecting me. In the 4 days since I had last seen her, she had made some changes in her color scheme. Her cheeks would have made good pinching. Her shoulders sat straight with all the sag gone. I got up from my seat in the sunroom, a drizzle room that day, when she came in, and she came over and shook hands. She told me her mother was well again, and this time Dr. Bradford said more likely than not she was well for good. Then she asked if I wanted a glass of milk. I grinned. "I guess not, thanks. As I told you on the phone, Miss Barstow, this time it's a business call. Remember the last time I said it was social? Today, business." I pulled an envelope from my pocket and got out the $10 bill and handed it to her. Nero Wolfe put it this way: "What excuse did you have for mutilating United States currency?" She looked at it puzzled for a second, then smiled, and then a shadow went over her face, the shadow of her dead father. Where did you get it?" "Oh, a hoarder turned it in. But how did those names get on there? Did you write yours?" She nodded. "Yes, we all did. I think I told you, didn't I? That one day last summer, Larry and Manuel Kimball played a match of tennis, and my father and I acted as umpire and linesman. They had a bet on it, and Larry paid Mr. Kimball with a $10 bill, and Mr. Kimball wanted us to write our names on it as a souvenir. We were sitting on the side terrace, and Manuel Kimball took the bill. Of course, he won it. And this is it. Certainly, there are our signatures. Mr. Goodwin, I suppose it's just vulgar curiosity, but where did you ever get it?" I took the bill and replaced it carefully in the envelope. Not Carlo Maffei's envelope, a patent one with a clip on it so the signatures wouldn't rub any more than they had already, and put it in my pocket, I'm sorry, Miss Barstow. Since it's just vulgar curiosity, you can wait. Not long, I hope. And may I say without offense, you're looking swell. I was thinking when you came in, I'd like to pinch your cheeks. What? She stared, then she laughed. That's a compliment? It sure is. If you know how many cheeks there are, I wouldn't bother to pinch. Good day, Miss Barstow. We shook hands while she still laughed. Headed south again through the drizzle, I considered that the $10 bill clinched it. The other 3 items in Carlo Maffei's envelope were good evidence, but this was something that no one but Manuel Kimball could have had, and it had got to Carlo Maffei. How, I wondered. Well, Manuel Kimball had kept it in his wallet as a souvenir. His payments of money, 1 or more, to Maffei for making the driver had been made not in a well-lighted room, but in places dark enough to defeat the idle curiosity of observers. And in the darkness, the souvenir had been included in a payment. Probably Manuel had later discovered his carelessness and demanded the souvenir back, and Maffei had claimed it had been spent unnoticed. That might have aroused Manuel's early suspicions of Maffei, and certainly it accounted for Maffei's recognition of the significance of the death and its manner of Peter Oliver Barstow, for that name and 2 other Barstow names had been signed on the $10 bill he was preserving. Yes, Manuel Kimball would live long enough to be sorry he had won that tennis match. At White Plains, on a last-minute decision, I slowed down and turned off the parkway. It looked to me as if it was all over, and the only thing left was a brief call at the district attorney's office to explain the facts of life to him. And in that case, there was no point in my driving through the rain all the way down to 35th Street and clear back again. So I found a telephone booth and called Wolfe and told him what I had learned from Sarah Barstow and asked him what next. He told me to come on home. I mentioned that I was right there in White Plains with plenty of time and inclination to do any errands he might have in our mind. He said, "Come home. Your errand will be here waiting for you." I got back onto the parkway. It was a little after 11 when I arrived. I couldn't park right in front of the house as usual because another car was there, a big black limousine. After turning off my engine, I sat for a minute staring at the limousine, particularly at the official plate hanging alongside the license plate. I allowed myself the pleasure of a beautiful grin, and I got out and just for fun went to the front of the limousine and spoke to the chauffeur. "Mr. Anderson is in the house." He looked at me a couple of seconds before he could make up his mind to nod. I turned and ran up the steps with the grin still on. Anderson was with Wolfe in the office. When I went in, I pretended not to see him. I went across to Wolfe's desk and took the envelope out of my pocket and handed it to him. "Okay," I said. "I've written the date of the match in the envelope." He nodded and told me to put it in the safe. I opened the heavy door and took my time about finding the drawer where the rest of Anna's briefcase was stowed away. Then I turned and let my eyes fall on the visitor and looked surprised. "Oh," I said, "it's you. Good morning, Mr. Anderson." He mumbled back at me, "If you ever get your notebook, Archie, we shall proceed." Wolfe was using his drawly voice, and when I heard it, I knew that one lawyer was in for a lot of irritation. "No, not at your desk. Pull a chair around and be one of us." "Good. I have just been explaining to Mr. Anderson that the ingenious theory of the Barstow case, which he is trying to embrace, is an offense to truth and an outrage on justice. And since I cherish the one and am on speaking terms with the other, it is my duty to demonstrate to him its inadequacy. I shall be glad of your support. Mr. Anderson is a little put out at the urgency of my invitation to him to call, but as I was just remarking to him, I think we should be grateful that the telephone permits the arrangement on short notice of these little informal conferences. On reflection, Mr. Anderson, I'm sure you will agree. Anderson's neck was swelling. There was never anything very lovely about him, but now he was trying to keep his meanness down because he knew he had to, and it kept choking him trying to come up. His face was red and his neck bulged. He said to Wolfe, "You can tell your man to put his notebook away. You're a bigger ass than I thought you were, Wolfe, if you imagine you can put over this sort of thing. Take it down, Archie." Wolfe's drawl was swell. "It is irrelevant, being merely an opinion, but get it down. Mr. Anderson, I see that you misapprehend the situation. I had not supposed you were so obtuse. I gave you a free choice of alternatives on the telephone, and you chose to come here. Being here, in my house, you will permit me to direct the activity of its inmates. Should you become annoyed beyond endurance, you may depart without ceremony or restraint. Should you depart, the procedure will be as I have indicated. Within 24 hours, Mr. Goodwin will drive in my car to your office in White Plains. Behind him, in another car, will be an assortment of newspaper reporters. Beside him will be the murderer of Peter Oliver Barstow and Carlo Maffei. In his pocket will be the indubitable proof of the murderer's guilt. I was minded to proceed." Anderson broke in. "Carlo Maffei? Who the devil is that?" "Was, Mr. Anderson, not is. Carlo Maffei was an Italian craftsman who was murdered in your county on Monday evening, June 5th, stabbed in the back. Surely the case is in your office." "What if it is? What has that got to do with Barstow?" "They were murdered by the same man." Anderson stared. "By God, Wolfe, I think you're crazy." "I'm afraid not." Wolfe sighed. "There are times when I would welcome such a conclusion as an escape from life's meaner responsibilities, what Mr. Goodwin would call an out. But the contrary evidence is overwhelming. But to our business. Have you your checkbook with you?" "Ah." Anderson's lips twisted. "What if I have?" "It will make it more convenient for you to draw a check to my order for $10,000. Anderson said nothing. He put his eyes straight into Wolfe's and kept them there, and Wolfe met him. Wolfe sighed. Finally, Anderson said smooth, "It might make it convenient, but not very reasonable. You're not a hijacker, are you?" "Oh, no." Wolfe's cheeks folded up. "I assure you no. I have the romantic temperament, but physically, I'm not built for it. You do not grasp the situation? Let me explain. In a way, it goes 4 years back, to the forgetfulness you displayed in the Goldsmith case. I regretted that at the time, and resolved that on some proper occasion you should be reminded of it. I now remind you. 2 weeks ago I came in possession of information which presented an opportunity to extend you a favor. I wish to extend it, but with the Goldsmith case in my memory, and doubtless, so I thought, in yours also, it seemed likely that delicacy of feeling would prevent you from accepting a favor from me. So I offered to sell you the information for a proper sum. That, of course, was what the prior offer of a wager amounted to. The proof that you understood it so was furnished by your counteroffer to Mr. Goodwin of a sum so paltry that I shall not mention it. Anderson said, I offered a substantial fee. "Mr. Anderson, please, don't drag us into absurdities." Wolfe leaned back and laced his fingers on his belly. "Mr. Goodwin and I have discovered the murderer and have acquired proof of his guilt. Not plausible proof, jury proof. That brings us to the present. The murderer, of course, is not my property. He belongs to the sovereign state of New York. Even the information I possess is not my property. If I do not communicate it to the state, I am liable to penalties, but I can choose my method. First, you will now give me your personal check for $10,000. This afternoon, Mr. Goodwin will go to your bank and have it certified, and tomorrow morning, he will conduct you to the murderer, point him to you, and deliver the proof of his guilt, all in a properly diffident and unostentatious manner. Or, second, we shall proceed to organize the parade to your office as I have described it, the prisoner, the press, and the proof, with a complete absence of diffidence. Take your choice, sir. Though you may find it hard to believe, it is of little concern to me, for while it would give me pleasure to receive your check, I have a great fondness for parades." Wolfe stopped. Anderson looked at him, silent and smooth, calculating. Wolfe pressed the button on his desk and when Fritz appeared, ordered beer. Every chance I got to look up from my notebook, I stared at Anderson. I cold see it made him sore, and I stared all I could. Anderson asked, "How do I know your proof is any good?" "My word, sir, it is as good as my judgment. I pledge both. There is no possible doubt." "Anything is possible. There is no room for doubt in the minds of a jury." Anderson twisted his lips around. Fritz brought the beer, and Wolfe opened a bottle and filled a glass. Anderson said, $10,000 is out of the question. 5,000. Phooey. You a dicker? Contemptible. Let it be the parade. Wolfe picked up his glass of beer and gulped it. "Give me the proof and tell me the murderer, and you can have the check the minute I've got him." Wolfe wiped his lips and sighed. "Mr. Anderson, one of us has to trust the other. Do not compel me to advance reasons for the preference I have indicated." Anderson began to put up an argument. He was tough, no doubt about that. He was no softy. Of course, he didn't have any real reasons or persuasions, but he had plenty of words. When he stopped, Wolfe just shook his head. Anderson went on, and then again, but all he got was the same reply. I took it all down, and I had to admit there wasn't any wine in it. He was fighting with damn poor ammunition, but he wasn't whining. He wrote the check in a fold he took from his pocket, holding it on his knee with his fountain pen. He wrote it like a good bookkeeper, precisely and carefully, without haste, and then with the same preciseness, filled in the spaces on the stub before he tore the check off and laid it on Wolfe's desk. Wolfe gave me a nod, and I reached over and picked up the check and looked it over. I was relieved to see it was on a New York bank. That would save me a trip to White Plains before 3 o'clock. Anderson got up. "I hope you never regret this, Wolfe. Now, when and where?" Wolfe said, "I shall telephone." "When?" "Within 24 hours. Probably within 12. I can get you at any time, at your office or your home." Anderson said, "Yes," turned on the word, and left. I got up and went to the hall and watched him out. Then I went back to the office and leaned the check up against a paperweight and blew a kiss at it. Wolfe was whistling, that is, his lips were rounded into the proper position and air was going in and out, but there was no sound. I loved seeing him do that. It never happened when anybody was there but me, not even Fritz. He told me once that it meant he was surrendering to his emotions. I put my notebook away and stuck the check in my pocket and pulled the chairs back where they belonged. After a little, Wolfe said, "Archie, 4 years is a long time." "Yes, sir. And 10 grand is a lot of money. It's nearly an hour till lunch. I'll run down to the bank now and get their scrawl on it." "It's raining. I thought of you this morning, adventuring beyond the city. Call for a messenger." "Good Lord, no. I wouldn't miss the fun of having this certified for a gallon of milk." Wolfe leaned back, murmured intrepid, and closed his eyes. I got back in time to bust the tape at lunch. I figured naturally that the hour had stuck, but to my surprise, Wolfe seemed to have notions of leisure. He was in no hurry about anything. He took his time at the table, with 2 long cups of coffee at the end, and after lunch, he went to the office and reposed in his chair without appearing to have anything of importance on his mind. I fussed around. After a while, he roused himself enough to give me some directions. First, type out Anna Fiore's statement completely and chronologically. Second, have photostatic copies made, rush, of the contents of Carlo Maffei's envelope. Third, go to the Park Avenue apartment and return Maria Maffei's purse to her and have Anna Fiore sign the statement in duplicate before witnesses. And fourth, check with Horseman the shipment of pseudo-bulbs which had arrived the preceding day on the Cortez. I asked him, "Maybe you're forgetting something?" He shook his head, faintly, so as not to disturb his comfort, and I let it slide. I was curious, but not worried, for I could tell by the look on his face that he was adding something up to the right answer. For the rest of the afternoon, I was busy. I went out first to a studio down on 6th Avenue to get them started on the photostats, and I made sure that they understood that if the originals were lost or injured, they had better use the fire escape when they heard me coming. Then back to the office to type Anna's statement. I fixed it up in swell shape, and it took quite a while. When I went out to the roadster again, the rain had stopped and it was brightening up, but the pavements were still wet. I had telephoned the apartment where Maria Maffei worked, and when I got there, she was expecting me. I would hardly have known her. In a neat, well-cut housekeeper's dress, black, with a little black thing across the top of her hair, she looked elegant, and her manner was as Park Avenue as the doorman at the Pierre. Well, I thought, they're all different in the bathtub from what they're like at Schraft's. I was almost afraid to hand her purse. It seemed vulgar. But she took it. Then she led me to a room a way off, and there was Anna Fiore sitting looking out of a window. I read the statement to her, and she signed it, and Maria Maffei and I signed as witnesses. Anna said next to nothing with her tongue, but her eyes kept asking me one question all the time, from the minute I entered the room. When I got up to go, I answered it. I patted her on the shoulder and said, "Soon, Anna. I'll get your money real soon, and bring it right to you. Don't you worry." She just nodded and said, "Mr. Archie." After I got the photostats from the studio, I saw no point in leaving the roadster out ready for action if there wasn't going to be any, so I garaged it and walked home. Until dinner time, I was busy checking up the Cortez shipment and writing letters to the shippers about the casualties. Wolfe was pottering around most of the time while I was upstairs with Horseman, but at 6 o'clock he left us, and Horseman and I went on checking. It was after 8 o'clock by the time dinner was over. I was getting the fidgets. 7 years with Nero Wolfe had taught me not to bite my nails waiting for the world to come to an end. but there were times when I was convinced that an eccentric was a man who ought to have his nose pulled. That evening, he kept the radio going all through dinner. As soon as it was over and he nodded to Fritz to pull his chair back, I got up and said, "I guess I won't sit in the office and watch you yawn. I'll try a movie." Wolfe said, "Good. No man should neglect his cultural side." "What?" I exploded. "You mean, damn it all, you would let me go and sit in a movie while maybe Manuel Kimball is finishing his packing for a nice little trip to his native land? Then I can go to the Argentine and buy a horse and ride all over the damn Pampa, whatever that is, looking for him? Do you think all it takes to catch a murderer is to sit in your damn office and let your genius work? That may be most of it, but it also takes a pair of eyes and a pair of legs and sometimes a gun or two. And the best thing you can think of is to tell me to go to a movie while you—" He showed me the palm of his hand to stop me. Fritz had pulled his chair back and he was up, a mountain on its feet. "Archie," he said, "spare me, a typical man of violence, the placidity of a hummingbird. I did not suggest the movie, you did. Even were Manuel Kimball a man to tremble at shadows, there's been no shadow to disturb him. Why should Manuel Kimball take a trip to his native land or anywhere else? There is nothing he is likely to take at this moment, I should say. If it will set your mind at rest, I can tell you that he is at his home, but not packing for a trip. I was speaking to him on the telephone only 2 hours ago. Fritz, the buzzer, attend the front door, please. He will receive another telephone call from me in the morning at 8 o'clock, and I assure you he will wait for it. I hope he does." I wasn't satisfied. I tell you, monkeying around at this stage is dangerous. You've done your part, a part no other living man could do. And now it's simple, but it's damn important. I just go there and wrap myself around him and stay wrapped until you tell Anderson to go and get him. Why not? Wolfe shook his head. "No, Archie, I understand your contention that a point arrives when finesse must retire and leave the coup de grace for naked force. I understand it, and I deny it vehemently. But come, guests are arriving. Will you stop in the office a moment before you proceed to your entertainment?" He turned and went to the office, and I followed him, wondering what the devil kind of a charade he was getting up. Whatever it was, I didn't like it. Fritz had gone to the door, and the guests had been shown into the office ahead of us. I had no definite ideas as to who it might be, but certainly I didn't expect that bunch. I stared around at them. It was Fred Durkin and Bill Gore and Ori Cather. My first thought was that Wolfe had got the funny notion that I needed all that army to subdue the FER-DE-LANCE, as I had decided to call Manuel Kimball instead of the Spiggity, but of course Wolfe knew me too well for that. I tossed a nod around to them and grinned when I saw a gauze bandage on Orney's left wrist. Anna Fiore had got under his skin all right. After Wolfe got into his chair, he asked me to get a pencil and a large piece of paper and make a rough map of the Kimball estate. With the guests there, I asked no questions. I did as he said. I told him that I was acquainted with the ground only immediately around the house and the landing field, and he said that would do. While I made the map, sitting at my desk, Wolfe was telling Orney how to get the sedan from the garage at 6:30 in the morning and instructing the other two to meet him there at that hour. I took the map to Wolfe at his desk. He looked it over a minute and said, "Good. Now tell me, If you were sending 3 men to that place to make sure that Manuel Kimball did not leave without being seen, and to follow him if seen, how would you dispose of them? I asked. Undercover? No, exposed would do. How long? 3 hours. I considered a minute. Easy. Durkin on the highway, across from the entrance to the drive, with the sedan backed into a gate so it could start quick either way. Bill Gore in the bushes, about here, where he could cover all approaches to the house except the back. Ori on top of a hill back here, about 1/3 of a mile off, with field glasses and a motorcycle down on the road. But they might as well stay home and play Pinnacle, since they can't fly. Wolfe's cheeks folded. Saul Panzer can. The clouds will have eyes. Thank you, Archie. That is all. We will not keep you longer from your entertainment. I knew from his tone that I was to go, but I didn't want to. If there had to be a charade, I wanted to help make it up. I said, the movies have all been closed, rated by the Society for the Suppression of Vice. Wolfe said, then try a harlot's den. When gathering eggs, you must look in every nest. Bill Gore snickered. I gave Wolfe as dirty a look as I could manage and went to the hall for my hat.
Chapter 18. I was awake Wednesday morning before 7 o'clock, but I didn't get up. I watched the sun slanting against the windows, and listened to the noises from the street and the boats and ferries on the river, and figured that since Bill and Fred and Ori had been instructed to meet at the garage at 6:30, they must already be as far as the Grand Concourse. My part hadn't been handed to me. When I had got home the night before, Wolfe had gone up to bed, and there had been no note for me. I finally tumbled out and shaved and dressed, taking my time, and went downstairs. Fritz was in the kitchen, buzzing around contented. I passed him some kind of a cutting remark, but realizing that it wasn't fair to take it out on him, I made up for it by eating an extra egg and reading aloud to him a piece from the morning paper about a vampire bat that had had a baby in the zoo. Fritz came from the part of Switzerland where they talk French. He had a paper of his own every morning, but it was in French, and it never seemed very likely to me that there was much in it. I was always surprised when I saw a word in it that meant anything up to date. For instance, the word Barstow, which had been prominent in the headlines for a week. I was starting the second cup of coffee when the phone rang. I went to the office and got the receiver to my ear, but Wolfe had answered from his room. I listened. It was Ori Cather reporting that they had arrived and that everything was set. That was all. I went back to my coffee in the kitchen. After a third cup and a cigarette, I moseyed into the office. Sooner or later, I thought, genius will impart its secrets. Sooner or later, compose yourself. Just straighten things around and dust off the desk and fill the fountain pen and make everything nice for teacher. Sooner or later, honey, you damn fool. I wasn't getting the fidgets, I had them. A couple of times I took off the receiver and listened, but I didn't catch Wolfe making any calls. I got the mail and put it on his desk, and opened the safe. I pulled out the drawer where the Maffei stuff was just to make sure it hadn't walked off. The envelope into which I had put the photostats felt thin, and I took them out. One set was gone. I had had 2 sets made, and only one was there. That gave me my first hint about Wolfe's charade, but I didn't follow it up very far, because as I was sticking the envelope back into the drawer, Fritz came in and said that Wolfe wanted to see me in his room. I went up. His door was open. He was up and dressed all but his coat, the sleeves of his yellow shirt. He used 2 fresh shirts every day, always canary yellow, looked like enormous floating sheep's bladders as he stood at his mirror brushing his hair. I caught his eyes in the minor, and he winked at me. I was so astonished that I suppose my mouth fell open. He put the brush down and turned to me. Good morning, Archie. You have breakfast? Good. It is pleasant to see the sun again, after yesterday's grey unceasing trickle. Get the Maffei documents from the safe. By all means take a gun. Proceed to White Plains and get Mr. Anderson at his office. He will be awaiting you, and drive him to the Kimball estate. Show him Manuel Kimball, point, if necessary. When Manuel Kimball has been apprehended, deliver the documents to Mr. Anderson. Return here, and you will find that Fritz will have prepared one of your favorite dishes for lunch. I said, okay. But why all the mystery? Comments later, Archie. Save them, please. I am due upstairs in 10 minutes and I have yet to enjoy my chocolate, I said. I hope you choke on it. And turned and left him. With the Carlo Maffei stuff and Anna's statement on my breast and a .38, loaded this time, on my hip, I walked to the garage. It was warm and sunny, June 21st, the day for the sun to start back south. It was a good day for the finale of the FER-DE-LANCE, I thought, the longest one of the year. I filled up with gas and oil and water, made it cross down to Park Avenue, and turned north. As I passed the marble front of the Manhattan Trust Company, I saluted. That was where I had had Anderson's check certified. Going north on the parkway at that hour of the morning there was plenty of room, but I kept my speedometer at 40 or under. Wolfe had told Anderson this would be unostentatious, and besides, I wasn't in the mood for repartee with a motor cop. I was pretty well on edge. I always am like that when I'm really on my way for a man. There never seems to be quite enough air for me. I breathe quicker and everything I touch, the steering wheel, for instance, seems to be alive with blood going in it. I don't like the feeling much, but I always have it. Anderson was waiting for me. In his office the girl at the desk tossed me a nod and got busy on the phone. In a minute Anderson came out. There were 2 men with him, carrying their hats and looking powerful. One of them was H.R. Corbett, the other was new to me. Anderson stopped to say something to the girl at the desk, then came over to me. "Well?" he said. I grinned. "I'm ready if you are." "Hello, Corbett. You going along?" Anderson said. "I'm taking 2 men. You know what the job is. Is that enough?" I nodded. "All we'll need 'em for is to hold my hat anyway. Let's go." The 3rd guy opened the door, and we filed out. Anderson came with me in the roadster. The other 2 followed us in a closed car, official, but I noticed it wasn't Anderson's limousine. Going down Main Street, all the traffic cops saluted my passenger, and I grinned considering how surprised they would have been if they had known how much the district attorney was paying for that little taxi ride. I opened her up as soon as I got onto the highway, and rolled over the hills, up and down, so fast that Anderson looked at me. He didn't know but what the speed was part of the program, so I kept going, slowing down only at the points where I had to make a turn and needed to make sure that Corbett, trailing along behind, had caught it. It took just 25 minutes from the White Plains courthouse to the entrance to the Kimball Drive. The clock on my dash said 10:40 as I slowed up to turn in. Durkin was there, across the road, sitting on the running board of the sedan which had been backed in as I had suggested. I waved at him but didn't stop. Anderson asked, "That Wolfe's man?" I nodded and swept into the drive. I had gone about 100 feet when Anderson said, "Stop!" I pushed the pedals down, shifted into neutral, and pulled the hand brake. Anderson said, "This is Edie Kimball's place. You've got to show me right here." I shook my head. "Nothing doing. You know Nero Wolfe, and that'll do for you. I'm obeying orders. Do I go on?" Corbett's car had stopped right behind us. Anderson was looking at me, his mouth twisted with uncertainty. I had my ears open, straining, not for Anderson's reply, but for what I was taking for the sound of an airplane. Even if I had been willing to get out and look up, I couldn't, on account of trees. But it was an airplane, sure. I shifted and started forward on the jump. Anderson said, "By God, Goodwin, I hope you know what you're risking." "If I had known." I stopped him. "Shut up!" I pulled up at the house and ran over and rang the bell. In a minute the door was opened by the fat butler. "I'd like to speak to Mr. Manuel Kimball." "Yes, sir, Mr. Goodwin? He is expecting you. He told me to ask you to go to the hangar and wait for him there." "Isn't he there?" The butler hesitated, and he certainly looked worried. "I believe he intended to go aloft in his plane." I nodded and ran back to the car. Corbett had got out and walked to the roadster and was talking with Anderson. As I got in, Anderson turned to me and started. "Look here, Goodwin, did you hear me say shut up? I'm busy. Look out, Corbett." I shot forward onto the back drive and headed for the graveled road that led to the hangar. On that, out from under the trees, the sound of the airplane was louder. I made the gravel fly, and whirled to a stop on the concrete platform in front of the hangar. The mechanic, Skinner, was standing there in the wide open door. I jumped out and went over to him. "Mr. Manuel Kimball?" Skinner pointed up, and I looked. It was Manuel Kimball's plane, high, but not too high for me to see the red and blue. It seemed to make a lot of noise, and the next second I saw why, when I caught sight of another plane circling in from the west, higher than Manuel's and going faster. It was helping with the noise. Both planes were circling, dark and beautiful in the sun. I brought my head down to sneeze. Skinner said, "He's got company this morning." "So I see." "Who is it?" "I don't know. I saw it first a little after 8 o'clock, and it's been fooling around up there ever since. It's a Burton twin motor, it's got a swell dip." I remember Wolfe saying the clouds would have eyes. There weren't any clouds, but no doubt about the eyes. I asked what time did Mr. Kimball go up? "A little after 10. They came out around 9:30, but the second seat wasn't ready and I had to fix the straps." I knew what it meant as soon as he said it, but I asked him anyhow. I said, "Oh, is there someone with him?" "Yes, sir, his father. The old gentleman's having a ride. It's only his 3rd time up. He nearly backed out when the seat wasn't ready, but we got him in." I looked up at the airplanes again. Manuel Kimball and his father having a ride together, up there in the sun, the wind and the roar. No conversation probably, just a morning ride. I started toward the roadster, to speak to Anderson. Corbett had left his car and came to meet me. I stopped to listen to him. "Well, we've come to your party, where's your guest of honor?" I brushed past him and went on to the roadster. Seeing no point in giving the mechanic an earful, I lowered my voice. "You'll have to wait, Mr. Anderson. Barstow's murderer is taking an airplane ride. I'm sorry you won't get him on time, but you'll get him." Anderson said, "Get in here. I want a showdown." I shook my head. Maybe it was just contrariness, but I was set on carrying it out exactly as Wolfe had ordered. That's not next on the program. Corbett had come up, around on the other side of the roadster, and now he stuck his face in at the window and said to Anderson, "If he's got anything you want, I'd be glad to get it for you." I had my mouth open to invite him formally when I heard my name called. I turned. Skinner had left the hangar and was approaching me. In one hand he had a golf driver and in the other an envelope. I stared at him. He was saying, "I forgot. You're Mr. Goodwin? Mr. Kimball left these for you." I got to him and grabbed the driver. I looked at it, but there was nothing to see. In outward appearance it was just a golf club. But of course it was it. "Lovin' babe." I tucked it under my arm and looked at the envelope. On the outside was written Mr. Nero Wolfe. It was unsealed, and I pulled out the contents, and had in my hand the set of photostats I had missed from the safe. They were fastened with a paper clip, and slipped under the clip was a piece of paper on which I read, "Thank you, Nero Wolfe. In appreciation of your courtesy, I am leaving a small gift for you. Manuel Kimball." I looked up at the sky. The red and blue airplane of the leading character in Wolfe's charade was still there, higher I thought, circling, with the other plane above. I put the photostats back into the envelope. Corbett was in front of me. "Here, I'll take that." "Oh no. Thanks, I can manage." He sprang like a cat and I wasn't expecting it. It was neat. He got the envelope with one hand and the driver with the other. He started for the roadster. 2 jumps put me in front of him, and he stopped. I wasn't monkeying. I said, "Look out, here it comes," and plugged him on the jaw with plenty behind it. He wobbled and dropped his loot, and I let him get his hands up, and then feinted with my left, and plugged him again. That time he went down. His boyfriend came running up, and Skinner from his side. I turned to meet the boyfriend, but Anderson's voice, with more snap in it than I knew he had, came from the roadster. "Curry. Lay off. Cut it." Curry stopped. I stepped back. Corbett got up, glaring wild. Anderson again. "Corbett, you too. Lay off." I said, "Not on my account, Mr. Anderson. If they want to play Snatchandron, I'll take them both on. They need to be taught a little respect for private property." I stooped to pick up the driver and the envelope. It was while I was bent over, reaching down, that I heard Skinner's yell. "Good God! He's lost it." For an instant I imagined he meant I had lost the driver, and I thought he was crazy. Then as I straightened up and glanced at him, and saw where he was looking, I jerked my eyes and my head up. It was Manuel Kimball's plane directly overhead, 1,000 feet up. It was twisting and whirling as if it had lost its senses, and coming down. It seemed to be jerking and coiling back and forth. It didn't look as if it was falling straight, but I suppose it was. It was right above us, faster. I stared with my mouth open. "Look out!" Skinner was shouting. "For God's sake!" We ran for the hangar door. Anderson was out of the roadster and with us. We got inside the door and turned in time to see the crash. Black lightning split the air. A giant report, not thunderous like a big gun, an instantaneous ear-splitting snap. Pieces flew, splinters lay at our feet. It had landed at the edge of the concrete platform, not 10 yards from Corbett's car. We jumped out and ran for the wreckage, Skinner calling, "Look out for an explosion." What I saw first wasn't pretty. The only way I knew it had been E.D. Kimball was that it was mixed up with a strap in the position of the back seat, and Skinner had said that the old gentleman had gone up for a ride. Apparently it had landed in such a way that the front seat had got a different kind of a blow, for Manuel Kimball could have been recognized by anybody. His face was still together, and even pretty well in shape. Skinner and I got him loose while the others worked at the old gentleman. We caned them away from there, and inside the hangar, and put them on some canvas on the floor. Skinner said, "You'd better move your cars. An explosion might come yet." I said, "When I move my car I'll keep on moving it. Now's a good time. Mr. Anderson. You may remember that Nero Wolfe promised I would be diffident. That's me." I pulled the documents from my pocket and handed them to him. "Here's your proof. And there's your man on the floor, the one with the face." I picked up Manuel Kimball's envelope and the golf driver from the floor where I had dropped them, and beat it. It took me maybe 4 seconds to get the roadster started and out of there, and sitting down the road. At the entrance, turning onto the highway, I stopped long enough to call to Durkin. "Call your playmates and come on home. The show's over." I got to White Plains in 22 minutes. The roadster never did run nicer. I telephoned Wolfe at the same drugstore where 2 weeks before I had phoned him that Anderson had gone to the Adirondacks, and I had only Derwin to bet with. He answered right off, and I gave him the story, brief but complete. He said, "Good. I hope I haven't offended you, Archie. I thought it best that your mind should not be cluttered with the lesser details. Fritz is preparing to please your palate. By the way, where is White Plains? Would it be convenient for you to stop on your way at Scarsdale? Gluckner has telephoned me that he has succeeded in hybridizing a Dendrobium melpomene with a Finlayanum, and offers me a seedling." Chapter 19. It certainly didn't look like much. It was a sick-looking pale blue, and was so small you could get it in an ordinary envelope without folding it. It looked even smaller than it was because the writing in the blank spaces was tall and scrawly, but it was writing with character in it. That, I guessed, was Sarah Barstow. The signature below, Ellen Barstow, was quite different, fine and precise. It was Saturday morning, and the check had come in the first mail. I was giving it a last fond look as I handed it in at the teller's window. I had phoned Wolfe upstairs that a Barstow envelope was there, and he had told me to go ahead and open it and deposit the check. At 11 o'clock Wolfe entered the office and went to his desk and rang for Fritz and beer. I had the Barstow case expense list all typed out for his inspection, and as soon as he had finished glancing through the scanty mail I handed it to him. He took a pencil and went over it slowly, checking each item. I waited. When I saw him hit the third item from the bottom and stop at it, I swallowed. Wolfe raised his head. "Archie, we must get a new typewriter." I just cleared my throat. He went on. "This one is too impulsive. Perhaps you didn't notice, it has inserted an extra cipher before the decimal point in the amount opposite Anna Fiore name. I observed that you carelessly included the error in summing up." I managed a grin. "Oh, now I get you. I forgot to mention it before. Anna's nest egg has hatched babies, it's $1,000 now. I'm taking it down to her this afternoon." Wolfe sighed. The beer came, and he opened a bottle and gulped a glass. He put the expense list under the paperweight with the mail and leaned back in his chair. "Tomorrow I shall cut down to 5 quarts. My grin felt better. I said, "You don't have to change the subject. I wouldn't make the mistake of calling you generous even if you said to double it, you'd still be getting a bargain. Do you know what Anna will do with it? Buy herself a husband. Look at all the good you're doing. Confound it. Don't give her anything. Tell her the money cannot be found." "No, sir. I'll give her the money and let her dig her own grave. I'm not violent the way you are, and I don't put myself up as a substitute for fate." Wolfe opened his eyes. He had been drowsy for 3 days, and I thought it was about time something woke him up. He murmured, "Do you think you're saying something, Archie?" "Yes, sir. I'm asking where you got the breezy notion of killing E.D. Kimball." "Where his son got the notion, you mean?" "No, you. Don't quibble. You killed him. Wolfe shook his head. Wrong, Archie. I quibble? E.D. Kimball was killed by the infant son whom he deserted sitting on the floor among his toys in a pool of his mother's blood. If you please. Properly speaking, E.D. Kimball was not killed last Wednesday morning, but on Sunday, June 4th. Through one of the unfortunate accidents by which blind chance interferes with the natural processes of life and death, Barstow died instead. It is true that I helped to remedy that error. I had Durkin deliver to Manuel Kimball copies of our evidence against him, and I telephoned Manuel Kimball that he was surrounded, on the earth and above the earth. I left it to nature to proceed, having ascertained that E.D. Kimball was at home and would not leave that morning. I said, "You told me once that I couldn't conceal truth by building a glass house around it. What are you trying it for? You killed him." Wolfe's cheeks folded. He poured another glass of beer and leaned back again and watched the foam. When nothing was left of it but a thin white rim, he looked at me and sighed. "The trouble is," he murmured, "that as usual you are so engrossed in the fact that you are oblivious to its environment. You stick to it, Archie, like a leech on an udder. Consider the situation that faced me. Manuel had tried to kill his father. By an accident beyond his control, the innocent Barstow had been killed instead. Evidence that would convict Manuel of murder was in my possession. How should I use it? Had I been able to afford the luxury of a philosophic attitude, I should of course not have used it at all, but that attitude was beyond my means. It was an affair of business. Put myself up as a substitute for fate? Certainly, we do it constantly. We could avoid it only by complete inaction. I was forced to act. If I had permitted you to get Manuel Kimball, without warning, and deliver him alive to the vengeance of the people of the state of New York, he would have gone to the chair of judicial murder a bitter and defeated man, his heart empty of one deep satisfaction life had offered to it, and his father equally bitter and no less defeated, would have tottered through some few last years with nothing left to trade. If I had brought that about, I would have been responsible for it, to myself, and the prospect was not pleasing. Still I had to act. I did so, and incurred a responsibility which is vastly less displeasing. You would encompass the entire complex phenomenon by stating bluntly that I killed E.D. Kimball. Well, Archie, I will take the responsibility for my own actions. I will not also assume the burden of your simplicity. Somehow you must bear it. I grinned. Maybe. I don't mean maybe I can bear it, I mean maybe all you've just said. Also, maybe I'm simple. I'm so simple that a simple thought occurred to me as I was walking back from the bank this morning. Indeed. Wolfe gulped his glass of beer. Yes, sir. It occurred to me that if Manuel Kimball had been arrested and brought to trial, you would have had to put on your hat and gloves, leave the house, walk to an automobile, ride clear to White Plains, and sit around a courtroom waiting for your turn to testify. Whereas now, natural processes being what they are, and you having such a good feeling for phenomena, you can just sit and hold your responsibilities on your lap. Indeed. Wolfe murmured.
And so concludes FER-DE-LANCE, the very first Nero Wolfe mystery. We've journeyed from a mysterious death on a golf course to a tragic finale in the sky. We've witnessed Nero Wolfe's brilliant deductions, Archie Goodwin's relentless legwork, and the complex web of revenge that connected them all. But perhaps the most profound question remains. Was justice truly served? Did Wolfe cross a line that should never be crossed? Or did he simply allow the natural consequences of evil to unfold? These are the questions that made Rex Stout's work timeless. These are the gray areas that make Nero Wolfe not just a detective, but a philosopher of justice. This has been Nero Wolfe Mysteries. If you enjoyed this classic tale, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this audiobook with fellow mystery lovers. The case may be closed, but the questions linger on. Thank you for listening. Until our next mystery, stay curious.